in and outside the parliament, needs to find the necessary motivation and the drive to make these areas for reform rallying points for the entire country and all stakeholders in Uganda's democratic process. We need to summon the traditional and non-traditional bases into this conversation. It should become a matter of public duty and burden, like most other citizenry obligations, not a preserve of politicians and their traditional allies. It is very likely that some of the emerging conversations out of this retreat will sound old to many veteran actors like myself in these spaces. But the theater and platform we seek to occupy and influence has over time enrolled new actors and goers, bringing with them new profiles and aspirations. We need to find the imperative to reorient ourselves, undertake deliberate learning and unlearning in the coming month as we seek to expand and enlist new actors and the changing mode of meeting our shared aspirations. When I look into this boardroom, there are several new actors. My brother and friend, the Honorable Kabuye, for example, is barely 25 years now? 25 years. For the yesteryears, he probably had different views of how his life will play out. He finds himself at the epicenter of what are going to be very critical, life-changing decisions for our people. So he needs to be in this space with all the actors like myself to be able to garner the necessary momentum and the consensus, to be able to drive the necessary momentum in the population and beyond. Of course, the current state of affairs in our country, especially in terms of rule of law and constitutionalism, has occasioned wasteful expenditure of public resources and worsened political tensions, just awaiting a trigger to explode. Therefore, when we discuss reforms, we need to urgently consider what is a reality of Uganda's changing political landscape. The existing legal and electoral framework for elections is not sturdy enough to guarantee free and fair elections. The country needs reforms to the constitution and legislation that affirms and supports the independence of the Electoral Commission, protects against disenfranchisement of citizens, protects the rights of the opposition candidates, and ensures principles of transparency, equity, and accountability. In addition, there's a need for the legal regime to ensure a level playing field for all participants in elections and outrightly prohibit the participation of armed personnel in electoral processes. Honorable comrades and participants, our constitution in a way has lost its identity over time and the purpose for which it was formulated. Some of you who really take time to understand our constitutional perspective will know that, for example, the 1995 Constitution was predicated on a two-term president. And as we speak, it is a constitution without term limits. The question of the day would be, is it still the same consensus? Are we still on the 1995 consensus, or it has been shifted, and therefore we desire new perspectives on how to progress, given the fact that the constitution as predicated then was shortchanged and shifted. I've cited a few cases here. That the case of the Honorable Karuhanga Gerard versus Attorney General, which is famously known as the age limit constitutional petition. Justice Kakuru made the following observations. in his dissenting judgment and aptly highlighted what constitutes what has been fractured and tilted in the basic structure of our Constitution. He said, the sovereignty of the people of Uganda and their inalienable right to determine the form of governance for the country. 2, the supremacy of the Constitution as an embodiment of the people's sovereign will through regular, free, fair elections at all levels of political leadership. Political order through adherence to popular and durable Constitution. 4, political and constitutional stability based on principles of unity, peace, equality, democracy, freedom, social justice, and public participation. 5, arising from all the four above, the rule of law, of the observance of human rights, regular, free, and fair elections, public participation in decision-making at all levels, separation of powers, and accountability of the government to the people. 6, non-delegable rights and freedoms and other rights set out in the extended and expanded Bill of Rights, and the recognition of the fact that fundamental rights and freedoms are inherent and not granted by the state. 7, land belongs to the people and not to the government, and as such, government cannot deprive people of their land without their consent. 8, natural resources are held by government in trust for the people and do not belong to the government. 9, the duty of every citizen to defend the Constitution from being suspended, overthrown, abrogated, or amended contrary to its provisions. And 10, Parliament cannot make a law legalizing a one-party state or reversing a decision of a court of law as to deprive a party. It is absurd, honorable members and distinguished participants, that for a considerable period of time, the foregoing principles have not seen the light of day. It is those principles that have guided our situation analysis and informed our conclusion that the regime in Kampala is deliberately stalling and derailing all efforts geared towards electoral and constitutional reforms, a reality that requires going back to the drawing board to address the pertinent issues of governance bankruptcy, and editorial tendencies. I have been sharing with comrades here inter alia that as the opposition and all of us who desire change, our requirement to meet cannot be any more urgent than now. Even if we met for a whole day and quarrel as the opposition, it is okay that at the end of the quarrel we find a new motivation and fresh perspective. It's very, very important. Honorable colleagues and distinguished participants, the nation deliberated on the constitutional framework that was promulgated in 1995. On the face of it, and all intents and purposes, our constitution was destined for success. As a constitutional law practitioner and legislator, I know that the constitution gains much respect if it stands for a considerable period of time without amendments. But I'm aware also that this revered document can be amended if the dictates of time and the people wish so. But unfortunately, in the case of Uganda, ours has been amended on the whims of one person, General Museveni, and for his personal benefit. I don't find tenable to wait for the constitutional review by government. Over the last 3 years, there have been attempts by government to initiate constitutional and electoral reforms. It is this deliberately obscure stance that has prompted some of our colleagues like Honorable Niwagaba Wilfred to initiate constitutional amendment bills. We remember and recollect so well